I think porn is single-handedly the most destructive habit that I've ever had to conquer. And while walking, was ambushed by three gangsters who were high and were looking for somebody to hurt. I get arrested. And the third member of the guys who attacked me watches me get arrested.
How do you teach someone to navigate more stressful situations and to build that capacity?
If you can find a picture of yourself, a future vision of who you'd like to become, it makes it far easier for you to step into that. If you don't conquer yourself, you conquer nothing else.
What would be the steps that someone can take in order to create even more personal power inside of themselves?
Addiction therapy just happens to be the first area of contention for a man. So that's where we happen to start.
Drew Birch is a speaker, coach, and adventurer known for his raw, unapologetic approach to growth and mental resilience. As the founder of Advantage and community leader behind the Goggins Challenge South Africa, Drew inspires people to push past their comfort zones and find meaning through challenge. Whether he's jumping out of planes, leading endurance events, or speaking to young men about discipline and mindset, Drew brings a message of self-leadership, accountability, and emotional grit. From struggling with direction in his early 20s to building a movement that encourages people to do hard things and level up mentally. Drew's story is a reminder that growth doesn't come from what's easy, it comes from overcoming yourself again and again and again. And let this code activate something deep within. Enjoy. So I'm curious, bro. Like, obviously, we met at the skydiving, and it's evident from what you do with Goggins Challenge, with skydiving, with shooting, all the stuff that you're doing, that there's an element that you seem to move towards fear over and over again. I'm curious, like, what have you learned about yourself through overcoming that fear?
I think you've hit on a very deep topic potentially, and so I'll try and summarize quickly why I moved to the fear. When I was a little boy, I was timid. I didn't grow up as a strong, courageous young man. I was a little skinny boy with glasses, sent off to boarding school at the age of 9. And I ended up in hospital having panic attacks from the stress of being in boarding school and away from home. So I didn't start off brave. I didn't start out strong. And I was fathered by a big, strong eighth man. I don't know if you know rugby, but a big dude who was well known for his courage and this mental fortitude. And my teachers had been his teachers and always asked me the question, you can't be Robert Birch's son, surely. And so I didn't start out mentally tough. And over time, I think doing these scary things, perhaps to prove to myself that I'm worth something, that I can, it's developed. And so now I have got more mental fortitude and the capacity to deal with fear and stress, but it definitely wasn't always there. And I think it is something that I've developed over that time.
Yeah, so you're sharing that growing up, you had a dad who was, always this like masculine figure. And then what was your relationship like with your mum too?
Very good. Very wholesome, close family. None of the stereotypical flags that you would look for any kind of issue within the family unit. As close as can be, but definitely not as much of a masculine macho as my father was, and developed into more of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great talking point for today, because it's like that development, something that a skill and a characteristic that's built.
Yeah.
And I know that how long have you been working with young men in this field for now?
About 6 years now. It started off organically. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing. It's something that has happened very naturally and over time, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go. It seems to be getting more and more exciting as it moves along. So
yeah, and what have you found in that journey with working with young men and also inside of yourself has been why it's so important for these young men to have a group, a peer group, and also a leader that can help them on their path?
Yeah, I think if one can find a mentor, it is a shortcut to missing the trappings that you otherwise would fall into. And I think that's been a massive part of the fulfillment that I get from being a speaker to young men, is that I'm able to be my truest, authentic self and say what their teachers and their parents perhaps can't say, shoot straight with them, and warn them effectively about what is ahead of them, the fun and the consequence to that fun potentially. And I think having a mentor allows you to do that effectively. If it's in business, it helps you to save a lot of cash all the time. And in life, as a mentor, helps you to perhaps not make the same failings that mentor may have fallen to, in terms of community, belonging to a group, having this group identity, being able to drive towards something together, and having a collective momentum that pulls you forward is, man, it's unmatched. The saying goes, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. And I love that for a group mentality of the whole is greater than the one. We want to punt the individual, but being able to be part of a group just gives you a strength that you otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that's massive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like a peer group that you're having where you've also like the habits and the rituals are aligned. So then it just becomes part of who we are. It's like what we do.
Yeah.
Because you fit into whatever the culture is built. So
Yeah.
I love that as well. Like the lone wolf, like switching the lone wolf to an actual peer group of young men, which it sounds like that's what you've built. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the problems which you've like come across with guys inside of your community. Like, what would you say is I know one of your big messages around the porn piece. So, and you've got a different spin on it to what's normal. So what would you suggest is why so many young men, watch porn and the actual payoffs that they get and how they can find those payoffs in a different way?
Sure, that's great. Yeah, I think I never wanted to be the guy who was talking about porn. No one wants to be the porn guy, right? And yet, out of everything that I've had to contend with and conquer over time, being a big party boy at university, being at the polo and the horse races and chasing lions and all the party drugs and all the booze and all the cannabis and the womanizing, and out of all of it, I think porn is single-handedly the most destructive habit that I've ever had to conquer, and perhaps one of the hardest. It is something that every man has to go through. No man in today's society gets away without having been visually bombarded by pornography. There's no way around it today. The only way to conquer that is to recognize it for what it is, recognize the consequence of that behavior and pattern, and then to conquer it. And so I think there are a couple of reasons why it's so dangerous, other than its prevalence, right? It's that you can't look away. It's in the series, it's in the movies, it's every scroll on TikTok, it's going to be there at some point. You have to be able to confront it and move on consistently. It's not a one-time fight. And then it hits you with two different chemicals under the hood. And the first is dopamine. And we think of dopamine as a reward chemical. And it's not. It's a stimulator. It gets you to do what you need to do in life. And your brain is wired to react to a certain amount of dopamine. And so if you think of your mind as a grassy meadow, if I come home every afternoon after school and go to a room and put my school bag down and whip out my phone, the pattern gets developed. And as I arrive home, the dopamine gets fired. And it tells my brain to initiate that same pattern. And my brain is this meadow, and I walk the same path every day to my bed, drop my bag and take out my phone. And that path becomes etched into our brain by our neuroconnectivity. And so over time, this dopamine fires and initiates this behavior. And then when we've watched porn, it's this massive releasing of that dopamine. It's a massive spike, far more than anything else in our day, which we would be instigated to do and rewarded for, would give us, right? And so our minimum threshold is raised, and nothing else gives us the same hit. And so that's the first big issue, is that we have this instigating reward chemical in dopamine that is massively spiked consistently, and then raises our threshold to the point that nothing else in your day can really come close to equating. Over time, we have something called the Coolidge effect taking place. And the Coolidge effect is essentially that you get less dopamine for the same experience, right? So you'll find porn addicts never watch the same porn twice. They want something new. The consequence to long-term relationships, extreme, right? Because we're already, as men, wired for novelty. Our biological reproductive angle is as many women as possible. We want to spread our seed. We're having to rein in a biological predisposition there. And now we're wiring our brains to be very, very attuned to the same thing, to needing that newness to get the same hit. And so you can very easily map the impact that that's going to have on long-term relationships. And then I think another thing that we're seeing in schools today is a massive uptick in attention deficit disorders. I think there are there's a lot to be said for the impact on scrolling, short form content, dopamine spikes there, right? Right, so that's a tough one. But then porn doing the same thing, massive dopamine spikes. When you're looking for something to pay attention to, you're looking for stimulation, you're looking for dopamine. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing in classrooms is twofold, that short form content causing damage, and then pornography as well. And so I think dopamine, massive consequence with massive impact by porn. And then opiates, another one that's got a heavy impact. Opiates are essentially the release. If you ever had sex and you have that orgasm, that's what puts you to sleep. It's a reward for basic biological functions that you need to be doing. The most important is pair bonding and procreation. So you're having sex and your body says, well done, my boy, you got laid. But you haven't. You were jerking off to some pixels on a screen like a cuck. And so you get this massive hit, once again, this massive spike of opiates, and you breaking your threshold. Now, what else would you have opiates released for? Social interaction, right? And so when you shake a man's hand and you look him in the eyes, there's an amount of opiates released, right? And that keeps you calm, that keeps you confident, that keeps you cool and collected. But no, it's not breaking your minimum threshold because of the porn. Yeah. And so we see a massive destruction of our confidence. We're no longer as confident as we should be, and we don't know that until we've recovered. Every man thinks he's about as confident as he could be. He doesn't know what he's lacking, and it's chemical. It's under the hood. And once we can understand that, we can understand how destructive it is, we can start to fix it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, like just honoring like the actual explanation behind that is awesome. And then even linking it to like a polyvagal theory, because I come at it lens with like the nervous system, the body, is there's like the concept in the polyvagal with that connection and love and safety is a part of the nervous system where that's when we're operating, we feel like in social interaction, where we feel like connected to all those around us. Like that's a great place to be. And like the beliefs that we hold around the world from that place are beautiful. Like things feel safe. Yeah, like in the polyvagal lens, as you start to move out into, say, dysregulation, then you start to view the world very differently, maybe in more like fight or flight, survival states, and actually even things like scrolling on the phone. When you look at how people are, their shoulders forward, down,
Closed off to the wall.
Closed off, dopamine hits. It's like that in itself is like creating the physiology of dysregulation, which then from that place is not a place to interact, to connect. So yeah, it's an interesting lens to view this through as well.
Yeah.
So with that, you've got like the porn piece, the social media piece, and social media in school must just be rife now.
It is a tough one. It's not one of the biggest issues that I'm having to address off the bat. I think it's something that parents need to be aware of. I've got a 4-month-old and she's already trying to look at our screens the whole time. We're having to be very aware of just being on our screens ourselves and her looking over our shoulders. We're not even doing TV time, but that becomes a real issue from 4 months already. There's obviously an addictive quality there for sure. What I am very aware of within schools today is sports betting, online gambling. Young men are getting trapped for they quit. They won $1, they won their 10 rand, they're getting taken for because the business model allows for that, right? And then nicotine use, vaping, also still a massive issue. Although there has been a downtrend towards pouches, those are definitely making a massive difference to the market, and we're seeing consequence to those as well. Even those Zins, we're finding if you speak to oral hygienists, essentially the gums are being burnt, and so there has to be some kind of negative application or negative consequence to that too. But I would say those two are my next big issues within high schools. Porn, number one, most destructive habit that we can find, but then online sports betting, taking its toll in young men as well. And then nicotine products, vaping. At least we're starting to see research showing how destructive it is. I think people are going to become more aware of it. But for the last 5 years, it's been a massive trend that we haven't really seen the consequence to yet, and are just kind of starting to wake up to. So those are kind of my 3 big ones.
Got you. And then part of your message is allowing, which I really resonate with, is helping people and young men like step into their own personal power.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would be like the steps that someone can take in order to create even more personal power inside of themselves?
Yeah. I think if we define powers, whether we're trying to talk about it, we're talking about your rate of ability to do work and thereby deliver value to your sphere of influence. I'm not trying to make this high value man. It's quite a cringy stereotype that the Tates put out, and it's about driving your Lamborghini and having the best watch and having all the cash, and that makes you high value. I'm not interested in that. I love a nice watch. I want to have lots of money to spend on guns and skydiving and helicopters too. It's not that I'm anti the material, but what we're looking to build is men who are able to provide value to the people around them. And so there are 3 pillars that we build on in terms of our power: financial, physical, and mental. Addiction therapy just happens to be the first area of contention for a man. If you don't conquer yourself, you conquer nothing else. And so that's where we happen to start. Once we can start to build that element of self-control, which is an aspect of power, right? It's power over self. We can then look to build the rest, right? So I need to be physically strong. I need to be physically strong enough to enjoy the fullness of life and step into my responsibility as a man, which is to protect those who I'm responsible for protecting. And so it's a functional training. I'm not trying to make guys aesthetic. It's cool to be good looking and to look good. That's beneficial, but it's not why we train. We train because there's a fullness of life that we can experience and a responsibility we can step into. That's one element of power, right, on a physical level. Mental addiction, being clear of addiction, is a big one, but stress tolerance, as we touched on earlier, you will never rise to a level higher than that of which you can tolerate in terms of stress, right? And the higher you go, the more stress you have to handle. And it's a skill that not everyone develops, and that is important to develop. How we manage stressful situations says a lot about us, and you can escape, or you can crumble, or you can turn and face reality and move through it. And so there's an element of mental power that I think is important there too. And then obviously financial is an easy one. It's just a lever by which we can do more work, having more cash on hand. So those are the 3 elements that we talk about, and they're built.
Yeah, it'd be good to double click on the stress piece.
Sure.
I think some people may be listening and be like, yeah, sometimes when I get stressed, it's almost like a part of me starts to take over, or a part goes offline, and then they're like act very different when they're stressed compared to when they're regulated and normal, which is totally normal. It's like that prefrontal part of the brain. It literally, when you get stressed, starts to go offline more and more and more, and maybe like the more logical thinking starts to go offline. So I'm curious, like, how do you teach someone to navigate more stressful situations and to build that capacity?
I have built capacity over time and repetitive stressful situations. I have simple mechanisms like box breathing, for example, may be a good way to physically take a hold of your mind, telling yourself it's not fear, it's excitement, changing the internal dialogue and the way that you look at the idea. Sure. Zooming out. Is someone trying to kill me? No. Am I going to be out in the streets by the end of the day if I don't get this right? No. It's not that big of a deal. It's actually all a game. Minimize the situation. We conquer it by minimizing. But I've found the most effective tool for myself is doing hard, scary things, getting it done, and then adding that cookie to the cookie jar, showing myself what I can do, and thereby building confidence through having a history of wins. I think that's a good way to do it. Building your confidence through competence is a good way to go.
Like it's exposure again and again and again. Prove yourself.
Yeah, I mean, skydiving, great example. Your first jump out the plane, so much going on.
Like the wind's going, like you're on the edge, and it's like everything that you've just been told just goes out the window. Literally, like, it's just like, what are you doing? And then take the jump, and then But yeah, each jump it gets easier and easier. Yeah.
And then you do your 10th jump, you do your hop and pop, and suddenly you're stressing again. And then by the time you're getting to your 50th jump, you're kind of bored, right? And it's that initial, nothing's changed physically. It's just that you've adapted to what needs to happen. You've normalized it, and now suddenly it's okay. And then you start pushing the boundaries and looking for the edge again, right? So I think that's exactly the same thing. So that exposure is what starts to normalize and make it okay, and raises your tolerance of that stress to the next level.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to go in if you're open to sharing about the story that you had where you had to literally defend your life, because that's about as stressful as the situation can become.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to almost like explain this in a way of one, the story, and then also for you that what you were navigating internally throughout this process. Because I mean, this is like as stressful as it could get, I can imagine. And yeah, someone listening in, they can then learn from, right, in areas of my life, not the same, but how you can start to navigate stress in different ways.
Yeah.
So
Context to the story, I had recently broken up with a girl who I thought I was going to marry, and I still had the engagement ring, and I was about to propose, and I saw some red flags and pulled out. And so I hadn't been out after dark in about 2 years. I had been CrossFit every morning at 5 a.m. I'd been jiu-jitsu every afternoon at 5 p.m. And I'd been at every combative pistol shooting competition that there was around in the area every weekend. And so all I was doing was training, never socializing. Broke up and was surfing in Victoria Bay outside of George, along the coast, and met some girls, and they said, come out with us. And I said, sure, it's great to socialize again. And I carry a pistol, and took it off, put it in the drawer, said, I don't need it tonight, I'm going to socialize. And then I thought to myself, it's the one night you don't have it, that you need it. And so I had it on my waist, and I ordered an Uber, and only went about 3 kilometers away from where I live, the George Horse Riding Club. Socialized, enjoyed the night, and then the Uber that was supposed to pick me up didn't arrive. And so I thought, it's only 3 kilometers, I'll walk. And while walking, was ambushed by 3 gangsters who were high and were looking for somebody to hurt. They surrounded me with knives and hockey sticks, and they wanted my money, and I said definitely not. And the man behind and to my left said, "Ek gaan jou skiet," which is Afrikaans prison slang for "I'm going to shoot you." Hearing the word skit, shoot, I looked for a gun, and so I looked over my shoulder for that gun to see a butcher's knife. We have different plastic colored handles. There was a red plastic handled knife. Thrust at my neck. Managed to block it, and kind of a 3-on-1 wrestling match that ensued, and managed to put 2 of them down. One was gut shot, and the other one I actually put 5 shots into. And then my gun jammed, and luckily the rest ran off, and the one that went down with the 5 shots rolled down the embankment, and standing there thinking, what do I do now? And obviously now the stress hits, and it happens so quickly that you don't really get to think about it. And luckily I had trained for long enough that it had been muscle memory, that I could stand my ground and manage to get my piece out and create distance. And so now I'm worried about this guy's life. And I recognize that he's got a chest wound. It's you can hear the suck on that sound, and I recognize he's got a leg wound, and so I start doing first response work. And a lady that was part of the gang but wasn't part of the attack comes over now, and so I put my voice recorder on and I ask her some questions. Why did these guys attack me? What's going on? And she acknowledged that they had been high, that they had been looking for someone to hurt, that they had done this before, and so I collected evidence while I was giving this guy first response. But his friends came back and stood behind me, and so I'm crouched over this guy, trying to put pressure on his chest wound, and thinking these guys are gonna go for me again.
Yeah.
And so eventually I decided I need to move this guy up to the road and try and find help, because I can't stay here. And so I put him over my shoulders and walked him back up to the road, and I flagged down a car. The first wouldn't stop. The second was the cops. And so they arrive on the scene with me carrying my attacker over my shoulder. And eventually, after about an hour, 9 more cop cars being there, and lots of scene, I get arrested. And the third member of the guys who attacked me watches me get arrested, and I go to prison for the night. And what was supposed to be the weekend, if you go to jail on a Saturday morning at 2 a.m., you're there until the advocate sees you on the Monday. And that is the scariest part of the whole experience for me. If you're a South African man, that's not where you want to go. And I go step into the cell, and these guys say to me, you know, what are you in for? And I said, no, some guys tried to mug me, so I killed them, and they left me alone. And so I slept for about 6 or 7 hours, and the whole time I'm just praying, man. I prayed like crazy, and then slept, and when I woke up 11 a.m. on Saturday, push-ups and praying some more, and eventually got hold of one of the correctional officers and said, I need to call someone to tell them that I'm here. No one even knows that I'm in jail for the weekend. And the head of the police station says to me, you don't need a lawyer, just tell us what happened. As long as all the shots are from the front, you can go. And the guy who I attacked and who I kept alive had come out of surgery. All the shots were from the front. He lost his leg, but his family arrived to say, he's a scully, he's been doing this to people for ages, he deserved this, you know, good on you, son. And I think the fact that his family rocked up,
So they came to you
and defended me,
wow,
and said he deserved it, went a long way. And instead of having to spend the weekend, I was released by 11 a.m. on the Saturday. Obvious self-defense, weapons on the scene, loads of witnesses, voice notes that kind of showed the attitude behind their attack. But the biggest adrenaline dump I've ever had in my whole life. I hunt buffalo for a living, right? I'm in the thick stuff at 7 meters. If the buffalo runs at me and I miss the shot, I'm over. I don't get an adrenaline rush anymore. You know that blood beating in your ears? Nothing. Skydiving, I got my skydiving license after this event. I don't get an adrenaline rush. I never had a moment skydiving that I had the adrenaline pump.
Wow.
I have the dopamine, but nothing comes close to 3 guys trying to stab you in the neck. So since then, it's changed my tolerance to stress dramatically. So once again, I think exposure changes the game, and you can change the internal dialogue. You have control over the dialogue. People come up to me and say, you know, how did it feel? How, like emotionally, how are you coping? And I say, all I felt was recoil, because in the moment I didn't get to think about it, and afterwards I was too stressed to be worrying about it. I was just trying to stay alive in prison for the weekend, and then once I was released, it was over. And over the last 2 years, it's now been wrapped up. Had no charges, and eventually the case was closed. So emotionally, I've had no impact really. I could have perhaps I could have told myself a story of like, oh, I almost didn't make it, and this is terrible, and now every time someone talks to me behind my shoulder, I want to have a freak out. But the story I told myself is that it was what I'd been training for 3 years. Flip, man, what guy doesn't want to be in a gunfight? That's a fucking awesome story. So was it scary? Yeah. Was I in the wrong place? Yeah. Was it stressful in the moment? Yeah. But we move. We're still around, and we keep moving.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing, bro. Like that's some story. And I mean, like, there's so many pieces off the back of that, but one of the pieces being that you had trained for years for that moment, but didn't even know that moment was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how important is it for someone to actually like be doing the work previous? I mean, with speaking directly to, I mean, there's men and then also women who are listening, but it's like you're preparing for something, like whether that be in the business that you're building, whether that be in your own physicality, like you're preparing for events that who knows what's going to happen. And this story is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carrying a gun is it's like a parachute. If you don't have one when you need one, you're not going to need it again. And so I'd rather have the tool on me every day and never need it than not have it on the day that it's required. And now I'm married, so doubly so. It's not that I'm just protecting my life, I'm protecting the life of my wife and my daughter too. So I think as men, there's a responsibility to be able to protect. And I felt that way for a number of years. And so in addiction therapy, we build a future vision of ourselves that we want to work towards, and build our daily actions that in a way that drives towards that. And so I wanted, and always have wanted, to be a man who's effective in combat. I'm not the best at jiu-jitsu. I get choked out every time I roll. I'm not the best shooter. I'm severely average. I'm not the fittest, but I'm still better than the man on the street, or at least I'm trying to be. And so it's not that I have to be the best, it's that I have to want to train towards and try to be the best. And so for many years, I had this idea of this man who was effective in combat. And so it dictated my actions. You're sleeping in, it's 5 a.m., the alarm goes off, work starts at 8, you could rest, but you want to be the guy who's effective in combat. You got those Never Back Down song playing in the background, and it was an old MMA movie. I don't know if you ever watched it, but it was one of my my cultural upbringings. So I'd go and do CrossFit so that I could survive the fight. And in the afternoon, you're tired. You could go home, but I wanted to be that guy who's effective in combat. And so I'd go and train. And I found that if you can find a picture of yourself, a future vision of who you'd like to become, it makes it far easier for you to step into that, to strip off the addiction. It kind of almost pulls you forward and out of where you're at and removes the necessity for continued discipline. It creates long-lasting motivation. If we can find a picture that's valuable and tangible and real to us, we really want to strive towards.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, they're double clicking on that piece because it's that creating that vision. But that's been like life changing for myself in my journey too. And yeah, there's so many I come into contact with because it's like having a vision of the future that's like electrifying, that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Like that in itself brings so much energy to life.
Yeah.
Actually, interesting, the skydiving
Yeah.
was created on this, I call it a freedom film.
Okay.
Whereas some people have vision boards and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just anything to create some form of like mind movie of what they're creating.
Yeah.
I created what we called a freedom film, where essentially all the things that you want to create, like a vision of the future, put into a movie,
Love it.
put music behind it.
Yeah.
And one of the things on there was the skydiving.
I love it.
And it's like, yeah, then you live in it every day.
Yeah.
And it's just exciting. It makes you want to.
That's a great way to do it. I haven't
Yeah.
thought about putting it into a movie before. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
so essentially the same thing. We've got 9 questions. They ask about 9 different aspects of your life. You consider your life as an Instagram reel, not nearly as cool as a video. Sorry, as an Instagram page. And each one of these questions is represented by one of these blocks on your Instagram page. And so one of mine has been, and it's the reason I started skydiving as well. I've got this picture in my head. Vans, shorts, black visor, throwing shakas at the helicopter while my boys and I jump out of it.
Yeah.
And I haven't done it yet. You need to be B licensed, right? I've still got some jumps to go.
Yeah.
But that's what got me skydiving. That's the picture in my head. I want to jump out of a helicopter with the boys and throw a shaka. That's like the picture. But having it in a reel, having it in a hype video, a freedom, but that's awesome. And I love that idea. That's the next progression. I like that.
Yeah, it's like getting all the senses involved because then you got the music behind it.
Getting pumped.
Yeah, exactly. Living it like it's happening now.
Awesome.
But I think like for people listening in, it's that having that vision of the future, of something that they're moving towards. So that it's just electrifying. It makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. It's like, yeah, makes me feel alive before it's even happened.
That's it.
And then when it comes into realities and create that same thing again. So combat for you was one of those pieces, like being able to protect and provide and stand up for yourself and also for what you stand for, right?
Yeah, I think that as a man, there is responsibility that comes with that. I think that it's also a lot of fun. I find shooting at the shooting range way more fun than hitting a golf ball at a driving range. And I get utility, right? So I get to have way more fun and I get utility from it. Jiu-jitsu is fun and I get utility. So I find it's a good way to stay fit, to keep your mind sharp, and to fulfill what I think we're naturally called to as men. So that's why I punted.
Yeah, nice. And what do you think about the masculine, feminine, whether there's almost like just a balance between that, as in like the roles of a man and the roles of a woman? Like, what's your view take on that?
I would go, as a Christian, I'd go for a equal in value, not equal in role. And I think that there is a hard distinction there. I think that men are good at protecting and providing, and I think that women are amazing nurturers. I had a discussion with a young lady in Stellenbosch about a decade ago, and I couldn't believe my brain, but her talking point, her argument was that men could be as good at being mothers as women could. And my natural instinct was definitely not. Women have got appendages that are built for this nurturing role that men, despite any gender dysphoria, would never be able to fulfill as effectively. And I think that biologically it's obvious that men and women fulfill different roles and have different skill sets. And although there can be crossover, are better at some things than others are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an interesting, like, debate, right? But no, it's so true. It's like even just biologically, like it's in the makeup, it's in the build. So you Christian,
Yeah.
you take more of the Christian viewpoint.
Yes, I spent a number of years trying to decide if I was going to be. I think that a lot of people are born into religion, spend their lives living and defending a religion, and never actually ask the hard questions themselves. And I spent 3 years reading all of the atheist talking points, whether it was Hitchens or Dawkins, um, and did the work and asked the questions, and now actually lecture on some of those questions. I do an apologetics type talk, kind of working through the questions that I asked and what got me to my position today. But eventually, yes, decided that is what I believe the truth is, and walking in that. And I think that's been a big driver behind doing what I do. I'm a big believer that we get to the end of the story in life and that we have a performance appraisal at the end, not perhaps just from a salvation point of view, which the Christian loves, right? That's the whole, the bedrock of the Christian faith, is that this Christ figure lays down his life and becomes Lord and Savior. And if you accept him as a Lord and Savior through this metaphysical law of faith, that guys like Napoleon Hill will talk about as well. But if we can believe in our mind and speak with our mouth, that we get saved. But I love this idea of this post-performance appraisal that's also spoken about in the Christian faith, but not as recognized. It's this idea that you get given talent and the master comes back afterwards to see what you've done with the talents given to you. It's this idea that we run this race and that at the end you stand to hear, well done, good and faithful. And so the biggest passion of my heart, if you want to understand my psyche, is this belief that I will get to the end of my life and be recognized and held in esteem for the impact and the legacy that I've left on the earth. And that's my driver. That's what gets me up in the morning, is that idea. And I think that's the baseline behind why I think men have purpose and why we need to be as powerful as possible. It's so that we can have impact and leave legacy within our sphere of influence, so that we can stand to receive reward for that.
And what would have needed to happen inside of your lifetime for that to take place?
Paul says some work it's tested in the fire, and some is like grass and straw, it's burnt up, it means nothing. But some remains like fine jewels and silver and gold, and that would be obedient work, and it would be good work, right? So if you believe the Christian story, then you would say, well, the most impactful thing I could ever do for somebody else was have them see this story, have them see what this Christ figure is, and then stand to receive the reward for their salvation, right? For having led this person to Christ and to the salvation story. So good works, stuff that is beyond and above what I would desire for myself, right? It's to the benefit of the people around me, out of obedience and out of sacrifice.
So work where you're being of service to others and actually standing up for what's true to you.
Yeah.
That
That would be the take.
Yeah. And that's like the vision of what you're moving towards every step. Yeah.
That's the driver. That's the driver behind why I do what I do. I think that if I can have a positive impact on men and I can build men, that they can then be the pillars of protection and provision that their families need, that strong families will build strong communities. And if we can have a strong community, we can rebuild the country. And then I see, working on the individual as having a national, perhaps international impact. And so that's where we start. But where we end, I hope, is a far stronger nation and a far stronger people across the whole earth. If we can just touch the hearts of the men and get them dialed in, get them effective, and make them as powerful as they need to be.
Yeah. And within South Africa too, I'm just curious really around because that work is obviously big work. And then do you find there's like a division inside of South Africa as well?
Massive.
Yeah. Like, can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that's been on my heart of late. Apartheid ends. We have our first democratic election in 1994. And Mandela steps out of prison and espouts these words of unity, We're going to be a rainbow nation. We're going to come together. And I think he meant well, and those are good words. And yet we see a divide in South Africa over race and culture that we seem unable to bridge effectively. And we see tribalism within our government, and we see officials that step in and just rape and pillage the land, while their people of the same skin color and culture stand by because there's a tribal system where the king gets to do what he wants. And I think we need to be able to unify to get around that. And so, once again, I'm up on Christian values. I think the West was built on Christian values. I think that we're seeing a weakening West because we've forgotten our Christian heritage. I think Islam hasn't, and that's why immigration into Europe is so devastating right now. They've held onto their tradition of the past, onto their religion, and the West has forgotten. So they've forgotten the Crusades, and which was a Christian history, because they're no longer Christian. Right? America is no longer Christian. And so you're seeing people who do hold on to their tradition, who do hold on to their religion, moving in. And so I think religious values can transcend culture and race and can be good. And I think the values that built the West, those Christian values, are good. I think they espouse values that build a strong nation. I think if you could have a people group who value integrity, can you imagine the South African politicians really valued integrity? Game changer. Can you imagine men who were courageous, who actually had a strength of character to deal and stand when they were afraid? Men that were meek. They have power to be violent, and they control it. They wield it effectively. That are kind and that are loyal. If we could espouse those values as a nation, make those more than just talking points, but values actually lived by, and if we could unify via those values, we could change the whole nation. And so I want to push hard in this idea. I don't come from the same place as a lot of the men of this country. 80% of this country is not the same skin color as I am. A lot of them are far less privileged than I am. I can't connect with them on that. We're not the same, unfortunately. We don't have the same culture. We don't have the same skin. We don't have the same language. But a lot of them have got the same faith. If we can connect on faith and actually mean it, we can unify on that. And then we can attain the goals that are shared. I want a safe country for my family, for my daughter. And I want the opportunity to provide for my family. So we have shared goals we can strive towards, but we need to be unified first. And the best way, I think, for our nation to unify will be under faith and those Christian values that built a strong West. I think we can build a strong South Africa again if we can strive towards those.
Yeah, and there's some really powerful messages in there, in the sense of the unity, finding connection points with, and a connection of people coming together on. I think there's a lot of the listeners are entrepreneurs and they're creators. They may have their own community or their own business, and actually, like, these things about having shared values and a shared vision of what they're moving towards to help bring people together, be really supportive. And I mean, this is a big task inside South Africa, because like when you drive down, and then, I mean, in Cape St. Francis, we spent some time there. We did the garden route and then spent a couple of weeks there. It was awesome. And I know that's where you're from. It's like there's these almost like the western side, and then there's also all the shanty towns, and they like, it goes for a long way. And it's like that. How do you solve that problem in South Africa?
There is an incredibly dangerous now disparity in wealth. And there are socioeconomic systems that you could punt that would fix it. I think the more important fix is going to be to stop the looting of our coffers. Our government has come in and stolen everything while pointing fingers at the 2% who happens to still have a lot of capital. I don't benefit from that capital. Right, I'm fighting month to month just like anybody else's. I may come from more privilege, but I don't have a massive bank account that I can pull on. Most whites don't. But the government, while stuffing their pockets, is pointing at the white man and saying, you're still to blame for the crimes of your fathers and the system that was around 30 years ago. So there is this massive disparity that does need to be fixed. I would argue for equal opportunity rather than equal outcome. And unfortunately, I think that while we are, as a government, perhaps trying to argue for equal opportunity, we are in fact arguing for equal outcome. And so I think if we can stop stealing, we'd have a lot of money to put towards, perhaps changing policy around business practice. If we could undo BEE and make it less about race and more about position, economically and otherwise, we'd have a change. Right now, we are the most race-regulated country on the earth, 143 race laws. And so I, as a young white guy growing up, knew I could never be a doctor, right? Because my black friend needed 60%. I needed 90 or 95. And so suddenly I have opportunities taken away from me because of the sins of my father. That generation's, for the most part, not around anymore. The guys who implemented and lived in and backed apartheid are no longer around. And so I think we need to at least move past that, implement systems that are fair and stop the looting of our coffers by the men in charge. You can't try and redress the country's issues from the bottom down. It needs to start at the top. If you want to implement those values, that value of integrity, it needs to start at the top. The man at the bottom is not going to listen if his superiors aren't. And so it needs to be a top-down redress.
That's that's a task at hand. I can imagine, just from like observing. And what I'm hearing from a lot of your messaging too is there's almost like the structure and having like aligned values and things that you stand for. Like you can tell that that's almost like a foundational piece to what you believe is where change happens from. I'm curious to hear your perspective around like freedom and travel, purely because I've just had Liz on the podcast, and we spoke about this too, how she lives like very nomadic, place to place. And I know with some of your messaging, you almost have like a perspective around like the freedom piece or like the travel piece, and how that can actually be detrimental in a way sometimes. And she also speaks very similar in that, where it's like this lifestyle can be glorified of like nomadic living, traveling around, but there's also a lot of challenges that go alongside that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, it's something that I have over the last year or two been speaking into with all of my high earning clients and friends. The men who have made it, they are 28 to 32, 33. They've got 15 to 20K a month dollars cash on hand that they're bringing in monthly, and they can travel. And so they have an unlimited potential for novelty in both destination and company. Our brain is wired to enjoy that novelty. And so we keep traveling and we keep finding new places and new women on the dating scene to enjoy. And as a consequence, never settle down and can never truly build something of importance. As we age, we become more picky about the person we want to end up with. And eventually we don't end up with anybody. And then we're a lonely, perhaps still wealthy dude that has missed out on the fulfillment that comes with building a family, settling down with somebody, having an intimate partner who you can go through life with and build with, and having children. I think the fulfillment of children is crazy, and something that society has started to overlook, because we're enjoying the selfish, very fun, but ultimately unfulfilling continued travel, and the enjoyment of almost the addiction of novelty. And I think that does have dangerous consequence eventually, even if we don't see it at first.
And what fulfillment has having a family and wife and kids brought to your life, or kid?
It's changed the way that I look at life in terms of how I have fulfillment. My heart's tank gets filled looking at my wife smiling at my daughter who's giggling for no reason. And there's a filling of your tank there that I think very little comes close to in terms of conquest and material gain. It's changed my risk appetite. I used to be very nonchalant about my life and how long I lived and the risks I was taking. And now my biggest fear is no longer that I would die, but that when that happens, I would leave behind my wife and daughter who would have emotional suffering in that. And so that has become my new biggest fear. Not that I would pass, but that I would leave people behind who wouldn't enjoy it. And so I think that's changed a lot. But the fulfillment that comes with having a kid, man, I recommend it. I highly, highly recommend it. It's incredible fun.
And what have you learned about yourself on that journey?
Man, it's still so new, and I'm still learning so much. I'm tired. We get tired a lot, and yet we have such an easy baby. So I can't imagine the difficulty that some parents must go through who have tough kids, who are sickly. I think your ability to be tired and keep moving develops over time. I think the biggest learning, if I can make this statement, because we spoke about gender roles and men and women and their differences, is how incredible women are. Women as mothers, waking up multiple times throughout the night to have this crying baby latch onto a chafed nipple, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And as men, we aren't primed to perhaps hear the same baby crying noises, and we don't respond to it the same way. My wife is a trooper, and I think moms are the most underrated occupation. I think being a mom is like the coolest, most hardcore thing a woman can ever be. And asking or assuming that she needs to be anything else is undermining what it is to be a mom. I think being a mom is crazy work. And I think I've developed a respect for women and their capacity just in that one role alone. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, right? Especially like, short sleep, the responsibility, like just overnight, all of that changes. I imagine like your priorities. I imagine overnight, your life just switches.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it changes up pretty quickly. But the dopamine that you get from every moment of being a dad completely justifies everything that you lose out on, right? Because you do lose out on being able to grab your girlfriend or your wife and going for a mission together somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It's not that easy anymore. You have this third wheel. But looking at baby when they're just born, crazy dopamine pump. Then they open their eyes and look at you and they stare into your soul. Dopamine off the charts. Then they smile at you. So you're continuously having these dopamine spikes as a parent that nobody told me about. So if you're into dopamine, if you like being good, feeling wholesome, having a laugh, and feeling like your heart's going to explode with fulfillment and joy, I highly recommend being a parent. I think we need strong fathers, but we need fathers. We need strong families. We need wholesome families. I think we all have to have babies, man. We all need to go out there and have lots and lots of kiddies. I think that's the way to do it. If we can do that, we can bring back the Western culture pretty strong.
Yeah. I mean, these pieces tie together with that, right? It's like having the values of what you stand for, and then also like reproducing, but actually being someone who can pass on their wisdom rather than passing on their pain and their confusion.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I suppose, where this message ties in.
Yeah. There's work to be done so that you don't bleed over your family, right? There's wounds that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
So we don't carry on that pain and make it a generational issue. My father worked on elements of his life and his character so that I don't have to deal with the same thing. And I'm doing the same, and hopefully I'm going to raise sons and daughters who are of good character and can pass that down.
Awesome. Awesome, bro. At this point of the show, we have a vault section. So each guest leaves a message.
Cool.
And that message may be picked in next episode or 10 episodes time. So if you're open, you pick the message, we'll reflect on it, have a conversation about it. The listeners at home can also reflect on that. And then, been awesome.
Fantastic, man. Before you do anything, try this. Ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, what energy am I in?
How does that resonate for you? Specific around maybe the personal power piece.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid statement. If it's not a fuck yes, then don't do it, or then no. And I think it speaks towards the drive through that we go through life with, right? Climbing in, head forward, and going all in into whatever you're doing. Matt McConaughey's father had a saying, he said, "Don't half-ass it." And I think if it's, less than a 7, ask yourself why. What's stopping the momentum? What's stopping you from putting head down? And if it's above a 7, then don't half-ass it. Back yourself. Go all in. I think it's a good statement.
Awesome. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it, man. And
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Great to talk to you. I really enjoyed it.
yeah, and just the work that you're doing all around with like the self-improvement for young men, but also the work that you're stepping into now is like so needed in society to build strong men, build strong families, and from the right values, right? From the ground up. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man. I know you've got lots of podcasts which are happening right now. And so yeah, man, celebrating you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me here.